We are all running around thinking that we're running from tigers all the time now. And so that is not allowing any of our energy to go towards, it's the opposite of fight or flight. It's rest and digest. So you have to actually slow down. And if you slow down and you take a breath before you eat, which if you think about it, most cultures throughout history have had some sort of practice where they slow down, express gratitude, and sit calmly before they eat. We don't eat pick berries off the trees while we're running from the tiger. We say grace or, whatever the case may be, and then we eat. I would say that's the best place to start, because not only does that allow your body to shift into a rest and digest phase so that you can actually absorb your food properly, but it allows some of the alarm bells to go off. And when the alarm bells are off, you can hear the sometimes quiet whispers of your body telling you that it needs something. So that's the simplest, best place to start, in my opinion. As far as what it feels like when something is off, that can look like a lot of things. It can look like acne, eczema, psoriasis. It can look like gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation. It can look like really bad menstrual cramps. It can look like headaches. It can look like brain fog or needing a nap at 2 p.m. It can look like depression and anxiety and ADHD. So it can just look like your joints hurting. Most autoimmune diseases arguably are caused by gut issues. They're all caused by essentially the same thing, presenting itself differently in different people.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flow Over Fear. I have a great show today for you with a great guest we have lined up. We're going to be talking about nutrition, and specifically, we're going to talk about how the gut and the brain are connected. And this has a lot to do with, not just our physical health and our well-being, but even our mental health. And we'll get into a lot of this conversation. My guest today is Leslie Bobb. She is an integrative nutrition expert, sought-after speaker specializing in the gut-brain connection. And she's also a consultant to healthcare providers and business owners. Leslie's insights have been featured in multiple national media outlets, leveraging her experience over the last decade in the nutrition and health space. Leslie is on a mission to empower individuals to advocate for their own health and their food decisions so that they can amplify their vitality and impact in life. Thank you so much, Leslie, for being here. I'm so grateful you joined us.
I'm happy to be here. I love your podcast, so I feel honored to be among the guests that you have.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and it's an important topic, though, within this that's often missed, because we're living in this culture of, and culture is almost a pun because that's a lot of what you deal in, right?
Yeah.
But this culture of diets and restriction and all of these different things that's leading to what seems like an unhealthy relationship with nutrition. And can you kind of start with what it is that your focus is on and kind of how you approach nutrition and why you got into it?
Yes, that's a lot of
a
deep
mouthful.
questions.
It's a lot.
A lot of deep questions.
Sure.
So I wanted to just kind of paint the picture. I just recently listened to your episode with Adam Lane Smith, which I thought was great. And he talked about attachment theory, and he painted this beautiful chronological history of our society and how we've gotten to this point where we're all just attaching in really weird, screwed up ways. And it's creating all of these mental health issues. So I really liked that, because in that way, that's how I describe where we've gotten to with our health over the course of modernization and the Industrial Revolution and all of these, the development of grocery stores and then just the development into the fast convenient culture that we have, and through the 50s with the development of microwave dinners and then advertising and Saturday morning cartoons in the 80s and so on and so forth. We've gotten to this point where everything about our culture is damaging to our health. It's counterintuitive to the way that we are created to live and thrive. So you could be a perfectly healthy individual doing the right things and still just every day be collecting this damage over and over and over again to your cells, to your gut. And so there's not much you can do if you're not paying attention. You're going to just break down. And then we've just developed this idea that it's natural, normal parts of aging. That our eyes are going to go bad and our bones are going to start hurting and we're going to start forgetting things and get weaker and get more tired and get cranky and all of these things that are just normal parts of aging that aren't really actually necessary. But because they're normal, we consider them inevitable. But normal just means average. And one of the things I talk a lot about with people and with my colleagues is that I don't want you comparing me to the average of an unhealthy population. That's like average isn't optimal. And the worse we get in our health as a society, the lower the bar drops. So when you're looking at reference ranges on your blood work, for example, those levels are changing as our average health changes, and it's not going in the direction that I want to necessarily be associated with. So that's kind of, I liked Adam Lane Smith's like explanation of how we got to where we got with attachment theory, because I see the same thing with our gut health, particularly. There are so many things about our modern lives that are damaging to our gut, and once your gut is off, every system in your body starts to break down. It's like running your car with no oil in it, or, it's just every system in your body is dependent on your gut being healthy and whole. And most people don't realize quite the extent that is true.
That's incredible. And that's a big statement that a lot of people don't seem to know about. I mean, I've heard a lot about the gut-brain connection, especially recently, and there's a lot of stuff on that. And to be honest, I don't know a lot about that, but to hear that every system in our body is related to how well the gut is performing, or along those lines, that's that tells me obviously that it is it's critical that we take care of it. So what is that? And I guess before I get into that, it sounds like your theories are consistent, obviously, with a lot of what we've heard on this show, with what Adam has said, and a recent guest Tim Ash has said about how, evolutionarily speaking, we've evolved as human beings, and really in this short time frame, we've developed a lot of these new behaviors, habits, and things that we've incorporated that are damaging to us. But how does the gut play into that? So can you kind of get into an explanation on how the gut is aligned with our health, our mental health, and all of that?
So when I say your gut really plays into every other system, I truly mean that. And we'll focus on the gut-brain connection, but your most, like 80-90% of your immune system is housed in your gut. They now know. Your endocrine system, which it controls, your endocrine system controls all of your hormones, but as a man, that might not mean as much to you, but it should, because vitamin D is a hormone. Insulin and ghrelin and leptin, like the things that control hunger and satiety, those are all part of that like endocrine system. So when we're talking metabolic disorders like diabetes, which is just destroying us as a people, that's all part of your endocrine system. And that is all super interconnected with your gut. Like every system. But your brain, they've recently discovered, they thought that your brain was only connected to your gut via a one-way communication pathway, but they've now realized that it's a bidirectional pathway. Mm-hmm. So your vagus nerve is the most prominent communication highway between your gut and your brain, and the signals go both ways. So I know that the focus of your show a lot is fear or anxiety. So we'll use that as an example, or we'll speak in that context with a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about. But an easy way to see how that is affecting each other is that stress is one of the biggest toxins for your gut. So when you're stressed out in your mind, because stress is a mind thing, your body releases chemicals. Your brain releases chemicals. You get cortisol and adrenaline and all of these other sorts of things that start flooding your system when you're stressed out. And those chemicals and those signals from your brain go to your gut, and they can wreak havoc down in your gut, which, I mean, we've known this for a long time. If you think about our vernacular, you have butterflies in your stomach, you have a gut reaction. There's a reason why we talk like that, because that's where it is. We feel it. I call it stress belly. Like, we just feel it in our gut when we're stressed out. And that's not by accident, that you're literally getting signals to your gut telling you that there's some, danger happening. And evolutionarily, you would have been maybe running from a tiger. And so your body would have needed to know, okay, we need to put all of our vital resources now into our arms and legs, and not so much into our digestive organs and our sex organs and all of those sorts of things we're not going to be using when we're running from a tiger. So when you're stressed out like that, you're depleting your gut of oxygen and blood flow, because you're using blood flow for other things. You're sending all these chemicals down in there, and it really starts eating away at the delicate community that lives inside your gut and the gut lining. So that's how your brain can communicate with your gut. It also does, things like tell you when you're hungry and all that stuff, but we'll talk about just the stress component here. Sure. But we now know also that your gut is talking back to your brain. So a lot of for instance, are you familiar with serotonin as the happy chemical? Okay. Most of your serotonin is actually created in your gut, not in your brain.
Wow.
And a lot of people don't realize that. So you create neurotransmitters in your gut that then travel. And so when your gut is having an issue, it's communicating with your brain. That's also how we know when we're full, for instance, or when we've gotten food. There's a lot of different really tiny mechanisms that work in your brain all together to tell you when you're hungry. And I was just reading an article yesterday about, they think they've discovered one of the mechanisms that contributes to being hangry. So there's actually biological processes that make you feel uncomfortable when you need food, so that you will go out of the safety of your home or your nest or whatever to venture into the danger that is the world and find food. And that's what they think is causing people getting hangry right now.
Well, I'm glad hangry is becoming a more used term, and it's not just
a scientific term now.
Right.
It's in the research. So your stomach is telling your brain these things the same way that your brain is telling your stomach these things. So it is definitely bidirectional. And what that means is that, particularly with anxiety, and there's a lot of ways that what you're eating can play into anxiety that we can get into maybe in a little bit. But in this context, if you are feeling a tension in your stomach because maybe you ate something you're reacting to, or you're having trouble digesting because you didn't stop and tell your body you're not running from a tiger first, sure, you're going to feel that tension. It's going to translate to your brain, and your brain is smart. Your brain wants to attach meaning to things. So if you're feeling tension, your brain is going to say, oh gosh, I have anxiety. Why? Oh, I must have said something really stupid in that last conversation. And it might be that your social interaction was fine, but your brain is trying to find meaning for the reason it's feeling tension in the belly.
Yeah, that's so helpful. And I'd never actually known that serotonin was created in the guts, or any different neurotransmitters were created in the gut, and that's how they communicate with the brain. But I mean, I can certainly relate to the idea that the gut reacts to anxiety and stress and because I mean, that has been certainly a story for me that's been I get butterflies just even coming on a show like this and talking. It's it's still an issue, but for somebody, so it sounds like it's more than just eating healthy, so to speak. There's more to it than that, as far as how we take care of our brains and take care of our guts. Is there more to it than just eating healthy, than just eating a healthy diet? Do we need to, are there other ways that we take care of ourselves in our gut?
Yes, there's much, much more to it. In fact, it's sort of it's a very deep well, but that's overwhelming to people. So I do want to preface that by saying, start where you are and do the best you can with what you've got. It's way too much to take on all at once, and I don't want to overwhelm anybody talking about this stuff. However, I really geek out on this stuff and I find it fascinating. So I will send the bucket down the well as far as we want to go, but I just want to let everybody know that you don't have to take on all of this stuff at once. I would say the most important thing is eating well. Because, and not just related directly to your gut, but a lot of the things that are in our food products now are directly toxic to our brains. So it's not just a gut issue when you're talking about food. For instance, you may or may not know this, but there are a lot of food dyes and preservatives that are banned in other countries that are not banned here in the United States. So if you get Kraft mac and cheese, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that brand, but if you get the mac and cheese on the blue box, in Europe, it's going to have a different ingredient list than it has here. Because those food colorings are neurotoxins. It is well documented. That's not wooey hippie stuff. It is well documented that these food colorings can cause hyperactivity in certain neurons and brain centers. It's been observed in children to cause moodiness, hyperactivity, aggression, difficulty paying attention. I don't know if that sounds like any syndrome that we have or disorder that we have nowadays.
Sure.
But, and there are adults that are hypersensitive to these types of things as well. And it can cause a lot of mental symptoms in adults as well. It can trigger migraines. It can cause anxiety. It can cause brain fog. So it's not nothing.
Right.
It's just, it's not the philosophy that we use when we're creating policy here in the United States to be better safe than sorry. Here in the United States, there's the responsibility for proof is on the consumer and not on industry, whereas in other countries it's a little bit reversed. So it is a matter of eating healthy.
Yeah, and that really hits home because there's, and you're right, it's such an overwhelming topic when we talk about this stuff because, you know, when you read, say, the nutrition facts on a box of whatever, you know, non-brand named mac and cheese, for example, or anything else. I mean, you know, it shows you right away the number of calories, which to many people that's absolutely irrelevant. Calories, you know, that part doesn't matter, or you know, or anything else like that. But then and then the ingredients don't make sense. Of course, there's just a bunch of. But the problem is that we're not that we're so overwhelmed by that, and I feel like, you know, that it's important, as you said, just to start where you're at, because it can be overwhelming, and you know, and that can be a source of stress to just look at all of that stuff. So any recommendation? Because I want to caution people here. I know that this can be a very sensitive topic when we talk about nutrition, and there's a lot of, you know, people who have a variety of you know, sensitivities in that range. You know, we have eating disorders within our own family circle, and other people struggle with obesity, and there's just a variety of different things that seem to contradict each other. But you know, from the perspective of what we're talking about here, it's not about restriction. In fact, that sounds like that's the damaging part of our diet culture that's influencing a lot of this, that's rearing its ugly head. Can you speak to that a little bit about how maybe how diet culture is impacting negatively the way we're looking at this stuff, or positively, however you think about that?
Yeah, I would love to. That's a really, really important topic, and I'm glad that you brought it up. So thanks for opening that conversation. But it's one of the underlying threads that my business partner and I work on with our clients is that relationship with food, because there's so much that people have taken on by the time they get to us, especially, not just, but especially as women. We're really taught from a young age that we have to be careful what we eat and what we look like, and everything is just wrong all the time. So it's we can't win sometimes. So yeah, I do want to talk on that. So we have decades of beauty standards that have contributed to restrictions when it comes to food. But it's not even just that anymore. I think if it fits your macros, or calorie is a calorie, the calorie is a calorie science that came in, calories in, calories out, that kind of science that came through as far as like fitness and health and nutrition, was one of the biggest disasters that we could have done to ourselves as a society. You don't even need to have a kindergarten degree to understand that 100 calories of an apple is not the same as 100 calories of a Snickers bar in your body. Like, I don't care how good you are at math, it's not going to be the same thing. So the fact that we took that calories in, calories out concept and we just adopted it across beauty standards, fitness goals, medical advice, like all of it is just, it's ridiculous. And it's really caused a lot of harm over the past few decades, because now what you have is people who are overly consumed with counting what calories they're eating and not paying attention to where those calories are coming from. And in fact, it has pushed people further from eating real food, which is the only type of food your body recognizes and knows what to do with. Because when you're just looking at calories, you're looking at, okay, what is the most delicious thing I can eat for the fewest calories? So then you end up getting fat-free things, which are loaded with all sorts of artificial sweeteners to make them taste like anything. Or you're getting lower calorie things that are just tons of salt in them, like fake salt, not good salt that has like proper ratios of minerals, but just isolated sodium chloride with iodine in it. Or you're getting people who are just consumed with, how can I get my pre-workout and my protein macros and my post-workout in whatever way I can consume them. So then they're eating almost nothing that's actually food, because they're just concerned with getting amino acids and proteins and maybe electrolytes if they're really woke, and that's about it. And you can get all of that without actually taking a bite of food. You can drink all of that now. So I think that really sent us down the wrong path on like high speed. And that has wreaked havoc on our gut situation. In fact, I've done videos just talking about how fitness and health are not the same thing. And bodybuilders can sometimes have the worst like gut situations of anyone I've met, just because they're striving so hard to meet these goals with that concept that the macros and the calories are what matter in order to achieve the goals that they're trying to get with their physique. Mm-hmm. So I'm not mad at them for it, but we've really missed a piece.
Yeah.
And, and that's just in like a physiological context. But when you talk about the emotional context that you had alluded to earlier with eating disorders, it's just like, it's so bad. It's so bad, because we're the only humans on the planet, or we're the only humans on the planet. We're the only living things on the planet that have to think about what they're eating and then feel bad about doing it.
Yeah. We've ingrained like this guilty conscious into it around a variety of things. That exists on so many levels. We've built that into how we are as consumers in this space. It's tragic, and it is affecting our health, and it seems to be overshadowing the good conversation that you're having of like, just eat healthy food and make sure you're taking care of your gut and your brain. And so kind of getting into how we're feeling, what does it feel like, or is there a way we should pay attention to how we're feeling to know that maybe our gut is off? Is there something we should be looking for? Well,
I think that the more you tune in, the better you can hear those signals, because when your gut is off, it presents differently with everybody. Yeah. So I think I would start people just by saying, like, let's not, like, I don't want to invalidate anybody's concerns, because if you're coming from a place of illness or a long time struggle with obesity or eating disorders, you can't just say, oh, I'm just going to eat food, natural food, and not worry about it. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
And there are specific things that you need to pay attention to and that you need to tweak. But the point of all of that is that your body was designed to eat the food that the earth grows.
Mm-hmm.
And that's regardless of your, religious beliefs, or if your, political beliefs or whatever. Like, that's just biology. Your body was designed to eat that food, and it doesn't really know what to do with the other food. It does the best it can. Your body's amazing, and it breaks things down, and it tries to do what it can do, and it says, oh, this kind of looks like it might have been close to an amino acid. Let me do this with it. And then the rest it just stores in the closet, which is our fat cells usually. So I do want to point out that your body is amazing, and it's doing the best that it can, but it's also extremely unique. So I can't tell you what to eat for your body. You can't tell your daughter what to eat for her body. It's all going to be different. And that's the best place to start. So I certainly don't, if anybody's listening that has struggled with things for a long time, it can feel very invalidating and frustrating to have someone be, well, and just don't worry about it and eat real food. I know that it's not that simple. But to get to your question, the very first place to start, I think, is just to take a breath. Because we are all running around thinking that we're running from tigers all the time now. And so that is not allowing any of our energy to go towards, it's the opposite of fight or flight. It's rest and digest. So you have to actually slow down. And if you slow down and you take a breath before you eat, which, if you think about it, most cultures throughout history have had some sort of practice where they slow down, express gratitude, and sit calmly before they eat. We don't eat pick berries off the trees while we're running from the tiger. We sit, we say grace, or, whatever the case may be, and then we eat. I would say that's the best place to start, because not only does that allow your body to shift into a rest and digest phase so that you can actually absorb your food properly, but it allows some of the alarm bells to go off. And when the alarm bells are off, you can hear the sometimes quiet whispers of your body telling you that it needs something. So that's the simplest, best place to start, in my opinion. As far as what it feels like when something is off, that can look like a lot of things. It can look like acne, eczema, psoriasis. It can look like gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation. It can look like really bad menstrual cramps. It can look like headaches. It can look like brain fog or needing a nap at 2 p.m. It can look like depression and anxiety and ADHD. So it really can just look like your joints hurting. Most autoimmune diseases arguably are caused by gut issues. They're all caused by essentially the same thing, presenting itself differently in different people. So if you have lupus or rheumatoid arthritis or fibromyalgia or psoriasis or any of these autoimmune conditions, the argument could be made that that's all coming from the same place.
Yeah. And it sounds like, and I love your answer there, because it implies that, the truth that we are all different human beings, and that all of us adapt to different things. There's no one size fits all, or one method fits all for everybody. It's not like, hey, everybody needs to do keto and we're all saved, right? No, I like the idea that it's just take a breath, take rest, take a chance to step back and evaluate, like, look at how you're feeling, and make small tweaks. We don't have to be perfect, but strive to improve on it, finding, what's best for you. So obviously the answer is not keto, right?
Well, so if you have treatment-resistant epilepsy, the answer is keto. No, I'm not mad at keto. I don't hate keto. There are some really undiscovered areas about the effects of keto and carnivore diets on your microbiome, because generally a diverse microbiome requires diversity in plant-based foods and fibers. However, when you are in a state of ketosis, and this is really like granular nerdy stuff, so we can switch, but when you're in a state of ketosis, there are mechanisms in your body that switch and operate differently. So some of the things, like, it's basically like you're operating under a different set of rules. So it might not necessarily be a bad thing, because all of the normal processes that we're judging to happen under a normal diverse diet, an omnivorous diet, aren't the same processes your body's like doing while it's on keto. But so if it makes anybody feel better, I haven't always been like this, and I didn't grow up on a farm. I always joke that my 3 squares growing up all came in like a blue box. So
Swanson child like myself,
yeah, I definitely grew up in a like convenience consumer culture in the 80s and 90s. I did not have great health. I had a horrible diet, and I didn't start even caring about that until I had a human I had to figure out how to feed. So then I started looking into it, and at that time, I was a young single mother. I was on welfare. I had no idea. I had very little resources, and I just started trying to figure out what was what. And this was even like when the internet was new. So I had to like do my research the hard way.
Right.
I don't know if people remember that age, but, so it was extremely overwhelming. I was like, okay, that's great when I'm rich, but for now, what do I do? So I picked one thing. And at the time, the biggest rock that I thought I could move was just avoiding high fructose corn syrup. And I intentionally forced myself not to pay attention to anything else but whether there was high fructose corn syrup in my food. Now, high fructose corn syrup got a really bad rap, so they started renaming it. So that doesn't necessarily work anymore because it has like 30 different names. But if you just pick one thing, like just start reading your labels on your food. You don't even have to do anything about them. Just start looking at them. Just that awareness enough is often, intuitively, we know how to eat. We just aren't really listening anymore. So we just have to like clear that communication pathway. We have to pick up the phone. Our body will talk to us if we pick up the phone. So sometimes just the awareness is enough. But if you're overwhelmed, I would say just pick one thing. I just did a challenge with a group of residents in transitional housing. And literally some of the comments were, okay, but like I'm buying hot dogs at the gas station for dinner. So this is the level we're talking at. And I just said like, hey, like just try to eat a rainbow each week. Not with Skittles, but with like real food.
That's where my mind went.
So it's just something simple. You can just challenge yourself in some simple way that isn't a pass-fail thing, because the pass-fail thing doesn't work with the body. Or you can just say like, hey, let me just try to not eat any artificial food colorings because I know that they are toxic for my brain. Let me see what that feels like. And that's really like where you go from there. It's like, okay, what does that feel like? If I'm eating gas station hot dogs for dinner, let me at least pay attention and see what that feels like.
Yeah, that's so helpful. I mean, to put it into perspective on how we can do this, because I feel like where we're at now is we go immediately from like, oh, I'm feeling terrible about myself. I better go to, and not to pick on keto, but I love picking on keto, but like I feel terrible about myself, so I'm just going to go straight to full on keto, and we just go from 0 to 100, and we burn out, and then we fail, and we feel miserable and a lot of shame about ourselves for it. But instead, I like the approach of just like, testing these pieces out. I took a similar approach when I a year after I got sober. I mean, cutting out alcohol was one great thing that I did for my health, but after that, it was like, I took a similar approach. I was like, I'm just going to cut out any food that has added sugar in it. And I'm going to add a lot more vegetables. And that was the key thing. I think more importantly, I added something that was like clean and healthy to it, and created more abundance there. But yeah, the shift was remarkable just in that little change. So if you can find that little thing, I mean, that may be power enough to change that gut biome, maybe.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. If we switch direction just a little bit again, in another way that sort of paying attention to stuff can help if you're struggling with anxiety or depression or something like that, is that starting to pay attention to and taking responsibility for your health is really like a gateway drug to self-improvement, in my opinion. I've talked to a lot of people who found that through getting sober. and that's amazing. But in a similar way, once you start to feel how good it can feel, you want to do the next thing. And as you start making those decisions that you know are good for yourself, you gain that like confidence inside, and it makes you feel more powerful, and it makes you feel more able to tackle other things. So sometimes it's easier to master yourself physically than it is to master yourself mentally. And that's a great place to start, because once you start building that momentum, like one good choice leads to the next, and then you start feeling really good, and then you get really hype about it, and then the next. And you're right, a lot of times we do go straight to the other extreme, and I understand the people that we're talking to. We have a lot of gung-ho, go-getting, type A type people. I get that. So, I mean, trust me, that's a huge component of my coaching program. It's like, all right, I know that that's what we want to do, but let's slow down for just a minute and see how that feels. It's counterintuitive to the way that our brains work as entrepreneurs and leaders and things like that. But it really is just one step at a time leads to the next and the next and the next. And before you know it, you're, going to Tony Robbins events and running ultra marathons. And just kidding. Like,
it's so true though. Yeah.
Some people get there, but other people are just like, holy crap, I had no idea how horrible I used to feel until I stopped feeling that way. And for me, that's kind of where it went, was like, wow, I didn't know that my normal was so bad until I started feeling better. Like, none of those normal things like allergies and headaches and that kind of stuff that is normal. So many of us carry around ibuprofen and allergy pills and stuff in our go bags or whatever. That's not normal, you guys. That's not how you have to feel.
Yeah, and that's such a powerful statement there too. Like, it's just like, that we don't, and it's freeing. It's a freeing concept that we don't have to take the giant leap, that we could just look at that next step. But I speak as someone who's been through that. Take enough of those small steps in successive order consistently, and you can achieve your dreams. You can achieve your goals on whatever it is. And you demonstrate, you set these points of reference for yourself, that I can achieve things that I didn't think I could achieve at one time because I took those small steps. What's the next small step that I could take? I love that. And so I wanted to kind of get into where you've taken this as a career. So you have Cultural Revivalists, which is your company that you work with. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you do there?
So Cultural Revivalists started out as my business partner and I met in nutrition school, and we just really both sort of really nerded out on the fermentation aspect of things. The nutrition school that we went to, we were trained in all the major dietary theories. So we're not just trained in the U.S. government regulations or in this thing or that thing. It didn't come from a supplement company. We went through all of the dietary theories, and we did a lot of experimenting on ourselves in, like they tell you in my undergrad's in psychology, and they tell you as soon as you start taking abnormal psychology, you're going to diagnose yourself and everybody with some sort of issue. So just hang in there.
I'm laughing right now because I was an undergrad psychology major, and I did the same thing. And that was like, I think that's probably where my panic attacks started, was with psychology.
I can see that. So in school, we experimented. We went vegan, we went keto, we went, raw foods, all the things. So that's why I feel so strongly in the things that I do, that there's just no one answer for everybody. But we made Cultural Revivalists because we both really geeked out on fermenting foods, which led to the gut health obsession. And we really just wanted something to pay for our travel. So we put a brand on it because we were going around talking about it anyway. And that grew into where we are now with this coaching program that we have. We have a virtual course. She's a trained chef. I have a psychology and communications background, and my degree is in public health. So we've really combined all of our different experiences and degrees and certifications and things into this program that teaches people like all these things that we feel like they need to know for a lifelong foundation of health under cooking lessons. So it's pretty fun because not a lot of other people are sharing all this information while, like, in the kitchen
Yeah.
while cooking. But for me, what it is, well, for both of us, what it is it is about that freedom piece. We both came to this and realized we had such a strong draw inside to serve the people that we serve. It's a little bit different, but we both share like passion for each other's dreams. And for me, what it is, it's about sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's about freedom, and it's about opting out of the sick care system that is just constantly arguing with itself and eating its own tail and like killing us all with bad information and outdated science and conflicts of interest, which is the biggest thing that people just think, well, they want to trust the government, that's who we're supposed to be able to trust. But honestly, your health is not the government's main priority. Our health as a society is on the list, but it's not the main priority. And your health specifically, nobody cares about the outliers when you're talking about millions and billions of people. The outliers, oh well, sorry. Hope your doctor can figure that out. But like when we're talking population level, we're talking, the greater good. And that means that your particular needs don't matter. And that doesn't mean anything about the government. That's just the way it is. But even our health as a society isn't the main objective. They have to be concerned with our economy, our national safety, our education, like all these things. They can't just focus on what's healthy.
Yeah.
So offering the most grace I possibly can to the government, it's just not practical that their recommendations are going to be solely focused on your health.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be a part of that confusing, contradictory, corrupt, oftentimes system. I don't want to be dependent on doctors who may or may not know what they're talking about and may or may not have my best interests at heart. I want to know how my body works, and I want to be able to handle it if something goes wrong, for the most part. And moving into that responsibility for myself was the most liberating thing I've ever done in my life. I don't feel afraid anymore that I'm going to get X, Y, or Z plague that's going around. I don't feel afraid that I'm just going to keel over one day and not know why. Like, people walk around with these fears every day. My own family members do. And I don't share them. And to me, that's freeing. I don't have to do what you tell me to because I don't know if it's real or not. Like, I know what I need, and it's not that or it is that. So for me, it's the sovereignty. I want people to have that freedom to be able to live their lives and to be able to fulfill their missions. Like, we're here for a reason, right? Like, you can't serve the people you were here to serve if you're sick or tired or afraid of being sick or tired. Yeah, and that's a shame to me. That just breaks my heart to see people not out there like doing what it is they were put here to do because of something that is so easy to fix.
Yeah. Well, it certainly breaks my heart to see that too, that we're in more of a treatment mentality in our medical care system. And I can understand that. I mean, we need to treat diseases, right? We need to treat our ailments. But I love the way you put it there, that there's a freedom in taking responsibility for the preventative aspects, that you take responsibility for your health and welfare before because nobody else is going to do that for you. I love that attitude, and you mentioned kind of with the cultural revivalist that you started with the fermentation process. Can you kind of, because I'm kind of naive on all of that. I mean, when I think fermentation, I think of things that I shouldn't be touching, like alcohol. but what is that, and how does that relate to the gut biome? And how does that?
So that's kind of almost level 2, but it's really one of the basic pieces of the gut healing framework. Fermented food. So fermentation is, in a funny kind of way, it's controlled spoiling. But what we do, fermentation is the earliest food preservation technique that we know of. So possibly as old as fire, people have been fermenting their food. And it's a great way to make sure that the food that you get during harvest season lasts you through the winter or the scarce season. We have fermented food is more prevalent in your diet than you probably realize. So all processed meats are fermented, cheeses are fermented. It's all over the place, yogurts and pickles and things like that. But when we went through this convenience revolution, we started cheating those techniques, the food processing techniques that take time. We made them faster so we could produce them more and quicker. But we didn't really realize what we were losing when we did that. And fermentation is a perfect example of that, particularly like lactofermentation, which is like pickling before it was vinegar pickling. Mm-hmm. So it's creating an environment where the bacteria and yeast and microbes that naturally live on all of our food can grow. And in doing that, they do several things. They start to break down a lot of the sugars and proteins in your food, making it more digestible to you, and sometimes unlocking nutrients in it that aren't there in any other way of eating that food. Mm-hmm. For instance, sauerkraut, like properly made sauerkraut, has vitamins and nutrients in it that you don't get in either raw or cooked cabbage, which is magic in my opinion. Yeah. So it pre-digests your food and makes it more easy for you to digest. As a byproduct, the microbes create a lot of the enzymes and nutrients that we need. Some of the vitamins are precursors for neurotransmitters and enzymes that we need to, as you know, or may not know, just for your listeners who don't know, enzymes they catalyze reactions in your body. So some of them help you digest and break things down. Some of them help you create and put building blocks together. So taking precursors or the building blocks for neurotransmitters or proteins or whatever, you need like an enzyme reaction to put them together again. Yeah. And a lot of those enzymes are created, I would say potentially all or most of those enzymes that we need for survival are created by the microbes that live in our gut and on our food. Mm-hmm. So when you ferment your food, the enzymes are doing all of that magical stuff that they do, and they're giving you all these good things that you need. Sometimes they also make things little bubbly, so they're fun to eat or drink. They tend to make things tangy or tart. So when you have that sour flavor, like in yogurt and cabbage that some people really don't enjoy, that's a product of the fermentation process. And then the third thing that they do is they protect the food from spoiling. So a lot of people ask when we have these classes if it's safe. And the health department particularly is sketched way out about fermentation because they can't really like control it.
Right.
But fermentation is actually safer than canning, because when you can, there is always the risk that your temperature wasn't high enough, or your seal didn't seal enough, or botulism gets in there. Botulism is something that lives in the soil that has a really high heat tolerance. So the normal temperature you would can food at, sometimes botulism can still survive. But when you ferment, botulism can't survive. Nothing else can survive than the good stuff that you're growing. So if you want to label bacteria as good or bad, you're basically allowing the good bacteria to grow so much that they crowd out the bad bacteria, so they can't actually do anything about it.
Okay.
And in that way, that's kind of what you're simulating when you have a healthy gut, is that you want a really, really robust, diverse community of microbes in your gut. And that way, if you do accidentally eat salmonella or staph or something, it just goes right through. It only makes you sick when it can root down and populate and take hold, and then it grows and it overpowers what's in your gut, and that's when you get sick. But if it can't overpower what's in your gut, you don't get sick from it. We eat pathogens all the time. Mm-hmm. All the time. Like we have staph living in and on us all the time, salmonella, like all that stuff. It's there. I'm not afraid of it. You know why?
Right.
Because I have that freedom of taking care of my health. So I'm not worried about foodborne illness. I'm not worried about, that kind of stuff, because I know my gut is pretty strong. And if I start to feel bad, I know what to do. I have my go-tos. So
yeah. Should we be taking a probiotic pill or anything like that? Is that just nonsense kind of stuff. We need to eat it. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
A probiotic's not going to hurt you.
Yeah.
It's most likely a waste of your money. Some people experience some relief from probiotic supplements, and that's great if they do. One forkful of sauerkraut has more variety in it than a whole bottle of probiotic pills. So if you buy anything that's been labeled, like mass produced, it's going to have to have been approved from like the USDA or the FDA or, health department. And in order to do that, you have to have a systematic way of creating it, and you have to be able to label exactly what's in it. Yeah. So when you get packet mass produced probiotics or even fermented foods, they know exactly what microbes are in there. When you have wild ferments, the kind you make at home, that's more natural. So the probiotics that you buy, they may make you feel a little better if you're suffering from like constipation or something, but it is better, I would say, to just eat a diverse diet and include fermented foods in your diet.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And by the way, you mentioned controlled spoiling. I think that's going to be my next band name. I'm gonna start a heavy metal band. We're going to call it Controlled Spoiling because it's it's that good. But I appreciate all of this because there's so much valuable info that we have from this episode, and so much deeper we can dig into a lot of this, but it would take, days and days and days, of course, like that. But I would love to know where where my guests can find you, where they can get in touch with you, where they can learn more and get your resources.
So lots of fun, and I could literally talk about this for days. I never seem to run out of words, but I'm on social media. I'm on all the major social medias. But really, if you want to connect, I would say, if you don't mind sharing in your show notes, the scheduling link, I am offering a free call to all of your listeners. Absolutely. And I would love to because things are so unique, I like to just really talk to a person, see where they are, what their goals are, what their struggles are, and go from there. It's not really, like, as I hope I made my point that I can't really just give you, there's sweeping advice for everybody. But if you'd like to talk more about your particular situation, I'm happy to have a call with you, and I'll make sure you have that link.
Well, that's so valuable, and I'm so grateful for that. I do have that link in the bio, and I'll have it in the show notes, so that if you're listening and you want that level of coaching and you want that free call, give Leslie or get on Leslie's calendar, and I'll tell you that as with anything where you need to really discover what works for you, whether it be in business or nutrition or what have you, always great to have a coach or a mentor help guide you through that. And Leslie, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and knowledge on this subject that we don't talk about enough, but sounds so powerful. Grateful for your time.
Thanks for giving me the platform.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Leslie, and to everybody out there, thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to you next time. Thanks. Hey, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this episode. If you've been listening for a while, you know how important community and mentorship is to living a life of abundance above your fears. If you want to connect with me, hear about new offerings, episodes, and strategies to live with conviction, courage, and clarity, then sign up for my newsletter now. It's a way to stay connected to me outside of social media and bring a little empowerment to your inbox, and maybe a few dad jokes here and there. Sign up now at adamcliffordhill.com. Now back to the show. Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.